Well, Mercury's in retrograde. So here we are with part 2. We only got through 1 or 2 cards, but here we are again. Sorry about that. I don't know why it happened. It just went dead. And I'm back. Sometimes Facebook does glitch, but I find it better to do these live events on Facebook than I like to do them on YouTube. YouTube's a little complicated, but I will put these all up on YouTube anyway. So I hope anybody who is here finds me again. I was putting up a card. I was just putting up the Tarot of the Hermit. Well, I feel kind of like the Hermit sometimes when I'm out here teaching like this, and I don't know who's listening. That's always fun. Let me remind people where we are and that we're still live. Hi, you found me. Thank you. I'm sorry. We had a glitch. Thank you. I had a glitch on the computer, maybe because there's snow coming here in New York, so I think that could be something to do with it, or it's just Mercury retrograde. Thank you for coming to this, back to here. So anyway, we're on to the Hermit, and we're talking about it's the same thing as the Marseille we just looked at in the other video that went dead, but it's about this wise man or woman holding aloft the light of knowledge. Now, right now, I'm not talking about reversals of cards. I'm going to talk about that at the end of all the cards, or maybe when we get into the smaller, the minor arcana, I may do that. But right now, we're just talking about what they are and just the symbolism and the color and just the basic idea. I always say in all of these classes, and in every class I teach, I do teach live, I teach private students, and I do teach classes in New York and online privately, so we can go into more depth than I do here. And I also do readings both online and in person, of course. And that can be arranged by appointment. That's not even hard to do. So anywhere you are, we can read. The point, though, I was making was that we go through these symbolisms, these colors, the idea of who it is that's represented in the card, what the archetype is in the card, and then we talk about letting go of all of that. So one of the first things you want to do is 2 things. You want to start finding cards, or maybe just the cards we get through once a month or through each class you work through, then try to meditate on those and really look at those and get to know them pretty well, and do magical workings with them if you want to, and try to understand what that card means to you in particular. And then you want to just start thinking about what it means just because of you, what it means to you. Like, again, not what I'm telling you the symbolism is, or what other books might tell you, or other websites might tell you what the symbolism is, or the meaning of the card. The meaning of these cards is pretty simple. Like if you talk about the Strength card, which we just looked at, that's about the higher self overcoming the lower nature. And that always depends on the reading. So it's right there in that card with the angel kind of slamming closed the lion's mouth. It's about the higher spirit, the higher part of you, your higher mind, overcoming your animal instincts, which is to murder, kill, maim, fight, scream, the lower nature of man. That's a pretty simple thing. And it depends on the reading. And in this case, the Hermit, and we're looking at, again, I'll go into Crowley. This is the Hermit here. Look how interesting that is. His cards are just really beautiful and full of more current 20th century, really, symbolism than were in others. Lift that one up, get a little picture. The fun part about putting links up is that we find new pages, too, of things to read. So this is from Mystic Medusa, and this is her take on the Hermit. And you can look at the Crowley card there. So there's that. So that's a little bit of a different card, a little different looking card. I have here a chance to look at it. I hope you can click on yours or you have it in front of you. There's a 3-headed dog there, and this represents the, I forget the name of the dog. Oh, I forget the name of the dog. If you know the name of the dog that stands at the gates of hell, let me know. It's in the Greek myths. And then these are Hecate's dogs. She's the goddess of the underworld. So this guy in this picture seems to be walking away from that and walking towards knowledge. He's got the light in his hands and he's burning through a forest of darkness. And when I do teach, and I say to people, it's like kind of like that. It's like you're in a dark room and somebody pokes a hole in, say, a shade in the window, and suddenly you can see some things. And then eventually poke more holes, see more things. Eventually the whole room is lit. And that's the idea of the hermit's torch, holding the torch of knowledge. So there's him. All right, hermit, thank you. So that's 9. So interestingly, 9 in the Marseille, right? That was 9. So we're going to see the strength card come up later, but that's okay. We don't care. So now we have an interesting card. Now we have a different place. So now we've gotten to 10. So we've gotten through the first 9 cards. And now we're to the next. Okay, so we're going to go to the next bunch. And this card is the gatekeeper for the next 10. This is called the Wheel of Fortune. Let me get up the Wheel of Fortune. Not the show. That's funny. Well, all right, here we go. So just get a little, it's in the Wikipedia again. So when Wikipedia comes up, it's kind of always, they have better pictures than other places sometimes. So happy to show you. Here's a link to the Wheel of Fortune in the Rider-Waite deck right there. So also in the Marseille deck, I'll show it to you rather than put that up. That's a simpler card. Again, the Marseille deck has the same colors. I've said this in the other classes over and over again. It's the blue, the red, the yellow, the green. It's pretty much all the chakras represented here in the Marseille deck. Oh, some people say, no, it's just because that's the colors they were able to get together with ink. You decide. Research it and decide, I say. I won't tell you what to think. So, 10. Here's these 3 little animals, 3 little monkeys, jumping on the wheel and turning it. And that's the Wheel of Fortune in that thought pattern. If you look at the Rider-Waite, which I'm holding up here, this is much more modern, and you have an interesting thing on here. You have in the 4 corners, you have the 4 elements. You have earth, air, fire, and water. Okay? So you have earth as the bull, air as the eagle, fire as the, where we have dragons? Yeah, dragons. Earth, right? Air. I'm done. Yeah, and an angel is air, excuse me. Fire and water. Water is actually the eagle. Sorry about that. These are the 4 points of the astrology, the 4 fixed points in astrology. We have Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and what did I forget? Leo, Taurus, Aquarius. Oh, help me. Well, Scorpio. I have a blockage on Scorpio today. That's the eagle. So the Leo is the lion, the Taurus is the bull, the angel is the Aquarius. Yes, that's the star card that's coming up. And then we have the Scorpio, which is the eagle. Scorpio, people think of it as the scorpion, but it's a triplicate sign. We have 3 parts to Scorpio. Sometimes people say 4, but there's 3 parts. You have the gray lizard, you have the scorpion, and then you have the eagle. And the eagle is the highest part of that triad. So that's what that represents. Also in the Rider-Waite, you have this symbology in the middle of those same signs and planets that are associated with it. Plus you have the word Torah, T-O-R-A, the Torah, the book of the truth is on there. You see it, T-O-R-A, T on the top, O-R-A. I've had people look up, and we've looked up the Hebrew letters. They're not entirely correct, but they mean Torah as well. And you have on the bottom, you have like sort of a demon. So that's like to the bottom of the underworld holding up. And at the top, you have a sphinx, the guardian of knowledge. And then you have, of course, the snake from the Garden of Eden there having a good time along the side. So what this card always means is it's like, who knows? This is what this card means. We don't know what's going to happen. It's all up to the elements. It's all up to the universe. It's like, we don't know. It's the Wheel of Fortune. You don't know how it's going to turn. So this is this mysterious opener of the gate to the next group of cards. Again, in the Thoth deck, I put that up. It's a similar thing. T-O-T-H, Thoth deck. You can look that up. It's similar symbology. You do have a sphinx, you do have a demon, you do have a whole bunch of symbology of the zodiac in the painting of it, and almost the same in a lot of ways. And it means the same thing. This just says fortune. It doesn't say wheel of, but it means the same thing, fortune. What's going to happen? We don't know. It's a mystery. All right. So I find a lot of people want to come to this and see if I'm reading cards. I don't do that unless we do that. I might do that as we go along, and I'll say I'm going to do that. I've done that a couple of times. People have had quick 3-card readings based on the cards we used of the day. So this is an educational video. This isn't like fortune telling. So that puts people off. They just want to have fortune telling. And if you want that, that's fine. You have to find somebody who's doing that. There's a guy on YouTube I find fascinating. I don't know how he does it. He reads cards for the signs. Like he'll come on and read, I'm a Leo, so I'll say, okay, let me see if he gets anything right. And weirdly enough, he gets some things right when he reads cards for Leos for the month. What I think he's doing, and I love watching him, I think his name is Tyler, and he does live events, and you should check him out because it's pretty interesting. He does them sitting on his bed, and it's like so cool and like chill. But he kind of, I think, concentrates maybe on a Leo he knows, or just the idea of Leos in general. I don't know how he does it, but he does it, and it's pretty intense. So again, if you're here for fortune telling, I'm not telling fortunes. I'm teaching about tarot cards. So that's what we're doing here. All right, so going on. So 11 in this deck is Strength, which is the same card we just discussed before. Strength card, the higher form of man or woman controlling its lower existence, its lower instincts. So that's that number, okay, but that's not in the same placement as this one. This is Justice. This is about balance. So this card is in the Rider-Waite deck. Justice in the Rider-Waite deck is number 11. And here, oh, this is a fun thing. I use this place sometimes, facade.com. Look at this. All these things come up, and it's kind of cool because there are all these interesting ways of looking at cards, and they're always different. So this is the Rider-Waite description and picture. So we have here, let's see what she says. The High Priestess is like the High Priestess. Okay, yep, exactly. All right, so this is, they're saying it's a woman, but we don't know for sure what it is. It's obviously someone who is very royal. We're on a throne. We have a crown with 3 tines, so 3 points. So beginning, middle, and end. My Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The 3 parts of the goddess, the maiden, mother, and crone. 3 parts, balance. And in the middle, we have a square, also 4 angles balanced. In the right hand, you have a sword lifted. In the left hand, you have the scales. And the scales represent, obviously, balance, decision, justice. When someone appears in these cards, excuse me, in red, we're talking about the blood and passion and power and strength. And around the shoulders of this being is green, which of course symbolizes money. And they're in a powerful place between 2 pillars, which shows up in these cards often. The 2 pillars represent entrance. You're entering into something. In this case, you're entering into court. You're entering into a decision. So that's what this is about. When you're reading the cards and the Justice card comes up, this card is about a decision and finding balance within decisions. And there's also the card of Libra. And if you know anything about astrology, that's what Libra is. Libra is the scales of balance, a mental card. Okay. So interestingly enough, I love this. In Crowley's deck, this is called Lust. This has nothing to do with balance at all. All right. So it's a whole different meaning. This person is in a sexual position, and this is about sex and procreation, and he's used this number based on his own magical systems. Again, if you're interested in Crowley, look him up and take a look at these cards, because they're very different than the traditional cards, and sometimes they surprise you. Okay, so this is about procreation and about renewing the existence of the species. All right, so now we're on going to 11. Doing pretty good today. Getting by. So I'm going to put up, this is in the Rider-Waite and the Marseille and in Crowley. Hey, it's called the Hanged Man. And we'll take a look at that guy. And it comes up, you know, obviously, if you just typed in the Hanged Man, you'd get thousands of other decks come up. And they're all pretty much the same symbol. You have a guy hanging upside down by a tree, and on a tree, or by his feet. Now, it's about waiting. It's about waiting for wisdom. It's about holding on and waiting for inspiration. It also represents the god Odin, who hung upside down to get the runes, and that's how they came to him, by hanging upside down by his feet. Let me find a good one that's not going to be all crazy. Teach me tarot. That's reversed. We don't want to go reversed. I just want a picture. That's all I want. Okay. All right, well, here's an interesting, another take on the card. So I like sharing that stuff. What I say to my students anytime I have them, and even people I read for, what does it mean to you? I mean, it really is, why are you looking at this card? And what do you want with this card? And what does it mean to you? There are so many places and ways you can look for the meanings of these cards. But it's really got to be, in the end, up to you what you think they're about. Here you go. Oh, there's a whole Crowley site, so now I don't have to put up any more, because here's the Crowley thing, and all of them are there. Yay! You can just scoop around in there, but you can just take a look at the Hanged Man. I'll put it up here. This is the Hanged Man. Again, you have the Ankh. Again, we were talking about Egyptian magic, right? This man is hanging not by a tree, but by the Ankh itself. And he looks almost like he's been crucified, as he has nails in his hands and feet. And you can see that he's hung upside down and become incapacitated. And underneath him is the underworld. And he's waiting for the inspiration from above to come through him to his head. People used to believe that if you hang upside down, you get more blood to your head. So I suppose you become smarter. I don't know. But people think those kinds of things. So when this thing comes up in a reading, you're thinking about indecision. You're thinking about waiting for answers. You're thinking about waiting for inspiration. So it depends on where it falls in the reading. And after we get done with the meanings of these cards, I will go into how to do, actually, when I finish with the major arcana, I'll start doing spreads. And talking about, I'll do a whole class just on spreads. And you can start reading with just the major arcana, which is probably your best bet if you're a new tarot card reader, because it's they're the harder cards to read because they have so much symbolism in them. When we get into the minor arcana, I'll speed through them because they're pretty simple. I mean, they're not as simple as, they're not black and white. There's certainly symbolism and color and ideas within them, but they're a lot less than in these. And so the reading in the major arcana, even if it's only upright, is a great way to start. So if you wanted to start with even just the cards we get through in these classes each week, up to this point, wherever we get to today, you can just start reading with those, just the first part of the major arcana. And then you can just read them upright and start really taking notes and seeing what you're getting. Reading for yourself is always a little more difficult than reading for others, because when you read for others, you can be, most of the time, if you're not related to them or married to them, but most of the time you can be objective. When you're reading for yourself, it's almost impossible to be objective about your cards. You almost want to always push it in the direction you want them to go. But you are more than welcome to practice that way and see what you come up with, and perhaps you find really wonderful answers for your questions of life. I like to keep cards by my side. I don't always pull them out for everything, but I do at least once a day try to look at a tarot card in some way and just keep my mind in that always. And that's part of being a reader, or understanding or working spiritually through the tarot, is always just like always grabbing for cards. And also, I'll take a small break. I'll take a break, but I won't really take a break. I found a couple of decks. I, again, love tarot cards, as I said before. This is a deck called the Visconti Tarot. There's Visconti. These are literally so beautiful. I'll show you a few of these, and we'll go back to reading the other ones. I mean, I haven't even taken them. All I do is like, I sit in awe of them because to me they are just truly beautiful. These are medieval cards. I mean, I don't think I can do it justice on the camera, but if you want to look them up, it's Visconti. And they are, some of them, they look like they're three-dimensional even though they're not, and they're all on the backs of gold leaf. They look extremely rich and quite beautiful. And just looking at them is enough for me. They're on black stock and they stand out. And so that's their early Renaissance examples of tarot cards. And here's the back of it. Beautiful. So that's one that I just acquired, and I find I'm going to leave it out and start working with it. Also, we have the Solabrusca Tarocchi from the 15th century. This is the cover of that. These are some of the oldest examples ever of tarot cards in the world, and they are beautiful. They're really, again, very Renaissance. Solabrusca, B-R-U-S-C-A. And here's an example of what they look like. And they're just extraordinary. That's the full, here's the emperor. Am I holding it correctly? No. There you go. Excuse me, the magician is number one. Here's number two. So they're not like how we've been studying. We have been looking at that would have been the magician, then this would have been the empress. That's certainly not the empress, and on and on. So they look a little different. But these were the cards that people used at first to play tarocchi. So these are tarocchi cards. And I don't know, I would sit, I'm gonna have to try to sit with these. I just got them recently, and just compare the poses of these pictures as compared to where we are. So here we are. This is 11. We just passed the Hermit, so that was like the Hermit. And, well, yeah, they're similar in their way. They're very large, and they're very beautiful. So if you really, you know, feel like getting involved in looking at the oldest versions, I'm using the Marseille deck because it's a known old deck. And I want to show you something. I just got this at Catland Books in Brooklyn. I went over there for Samhain, and I had looked at these. Now I am an herbalist, and I do flower remedy and all that kind of things. My path as a witch is in healing and herbalism. So these are beautiful cards. I haven't even opened them yet, but they have, each one of these is a flower card, and each one of these flower cards has meaning. So if I pulled open, and I pulled open Daffodil, this is represents Narcissus and rebirth and new beginnings. So this is called fortune-telling cards. There are tons of them. You can find Doreen Virtue has angel cards and Mary Magdalene cards and every kind of card. That's that's just sort of a meditation kind of a card. And also sometimes people use them just for fortune telling, but not necessarily fortune telling cards. But there's another kind of a card out there. There's other kinds of cards that are specifically a gypsy fortune telling deck, or different kinds of fortune telling decks. Those are different. Sometimes they use tarot symbology, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they mix tarot symbology with fortune telling. So take your time and explore. This right now we're talking about tarot and the study of tarot, T-A-R-O-T, tarot only, nothing else. All right. So, but we can talk about those other cards, and if you're interested in those things and you want me to speak to you about them, I'm very happy to do so anytime. Always feel comfortable writing to me. Sometimes better on the groups if we're not friends on Facebook. So at the Magic Apothecary, which is where this is going to be, you can write to me there. You can try to write to me on Facebook if you can find me on Facebook. And just sometimes Facebook's odd. Like if we're not friends, I may not be able to see you, and you go into my mystery box of sorts. So, but you can certainly write in the Magic Apothecary, and you can write to any kind of thing you want there, and I most likely will check within a week and get back to you on those. So, or sooner, right? And if you have questions, here's a good time to ask them. So number 13, we love 13. Why 13? What does 13 mean? Some people are like, oh, that's a bad number, a bad luck number. Sure. Well, it might have been bad luck for, I don't know, Jesus, who at the Last Supper was him plus 12 apostles, and that was the end of him and his last day on earth. So maybe bad luck for him that day. Also, we talk about there being 13 moons in a year, and if you look at your calendar, 13 full moons. There are 12 months, but there were 13 moons. So that's interesting. And this is called the Death card. The Death card. I love this card because people get really scared of this card. You see it in like movies. Oh, the gypsy pulled the death card. Ah, I'm going to die. Wee. It has absolutely nothing to do with death, though, which I think is fantastic. Nothing at all. It has to do with rebirth. It has to do with death being the entranceway to rebirth and to resurrection. Without death, there can't be any resurrection, right? Without something falling apart and ending, then it can't be born again. Oh, this is good. I'll give you these guys. This is a nice little, oh, cool. This is a nice little journal online. I love the internet. I do. And what they're doing is comparing a whole bunch of cards, and they have a card of the week kind of thing. And this on there, you'll find several death cards. You'll actually find the Marseille, and you're going to find the Rider-Waite. So let me just show you the Marseille first. Oh, the death with the sickle. All right. Easy. And look at all the little hands coming in, stuff that he's chopped up, and they're in the grave. And it's just, that's that. Period. Death. All right. So then we have here in Rider-Waite a little more symbology. So let's take a look at this card. If you want to click on that link, or if you want to look at it in your hands, Death card. He's like a black clad skeleton guy on a white horse. Now, black being not bad, but yin or internal or taking in, or the feminine, the thing that the underworld, the dark place, the womb. And he's on a white horse, rebirth. White means rebirth, creativity, expansion. And then you have this wonderful black flag with a white flower on it. Again, reborn. The flower looks like the head of an infant coming out of the womb. That's exactly what it looks like. The shape and size of it, that's what it's supposed to represent. Then you have in front of death this pope or priest or bishop saying, please don't run us over. Oh, but he's already done that. He stepped over the king. The king is dead. You can't stop it. You can't stop death. Everybody does it. Then we have him stamping on gold, and there's a child, an innocent child in front of death going, oh, what's that? Oh, done. And then there's this, young woman who's a pure virgin, a white-clad woman dying. In the background, we have ships, and we have mountains, and we have all of this stuff. And we also have the tower and the two pillars again, the sun rising between these two pillars. The pillars are a very important part of the tarot, and that's why they talk about the tarot being from Kabbalah. In Kabbalah, the tree of life is two pillars, white and dark, light and dark. So here's these pillars again, and between the pillars rises the sun. So that's a pretty interesting, wonderful card. Love this card. 13. So what does it mean? Well, doesn't mean death. I guess it could. I think it would depend on the reading. I think if you're reading about somebody who's sick or somebody who is going to transition from this life to the next, maybe. Or it doesn't mean that. It just means transformation. Transformation. Crowley's card is very interesting too. In it, he has this black figure, and he's got he's under the water, and he's like in the subconscious. Death is always with us. Death is all around us. Death is everywhere. And again, it looks like he smashed those elements that were in the other card, the 4 elements, the earth, air, fire, water, the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. He smashed through what we consider to be our material plane. So, right? So death. So when you're reading that card, always want to be careful. One thing, I had a really cool tarot mentor in my early 20s. I was a bartender. I don't know if I talked about her already, but I'll talk about her again anyway. And I was a bartender, and she would come in every day around 2 or 3 in the afternoon and just have a brandy. She's this bit older lady, and she and I got to talking because that's what you do. And one thing led to another, and she found that I studied tarot or worked with tarot, and she said, we're going to read every day, bring your deck. So I bought myself a little tiny tarot deck, and we started reading. And what she loved to do was question me. Like I would say, well, this is a death card. It means death. She said, does it? What does it really mean? What does the symbolism mean? So she would question me and said, Are you sure that's what it means? Let's do a reading. I said, is it death in this reading? No, in this reading, it can't be death because you're talking about a job. Right. But what's the death of a job? Oh, transition. Oh, what's the death of a relationship? Oh, transition. What's the death of the body? Oh, transition. So that's really what it means. And also she told me very clearly, do not ever, and I agree, I take this to heart and I mean this, don't tell people bad things. Don't tell people when you're reading cards, oh, somebody's going to die. You see the card, and if that's what it means to you as the reader, you keep that to yourself, and you try to get them to say or understand that something's going to change, that there's going to be a huge change. When the death card comes up in readings for me, I always say it doesn't mean you're going to die. It doesn't mean anything about that. What it does mean is a transition. Well, death is a transition. So, but just saying that to people will calm them, because what you could do as a reader is plant a seed you don't want to plant. You don't want to plant a seed that they're going to die and then they do. You don't want that on your conscience. So you don't want them starting to think they're going to die. They'll start to look for ways to manifest it. So you have a big responsibility when you read cards. Whatever you say, somebody's going to remember that reading. I can remember most every card reading I've ever had, as I'm sure you have. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't had card readings and have meaning in them that you understood and that you've carried with you. So that's a very big cautionary tale based on my mentor at the bar. Don't tell people stuff that they could make happen because they start to obsess about it. That's how she put it to me, and that's how I'm putting it to you. All right? So there's death card. Oh, we're doing so good. All right. So the next card up is Temperance. So I'll look for that for you. Let me get rid of some of these other tabs. Maybe that's why the computer died before, but it won again. Okay. So the Temperance card. Temperance. Temperance means balance or temperate, balanced. It's interesting. We just had a card called Justice that was about temperance, right? This is about a different kind of a thing, though. This is about artistic temperance, making something come out of nowhere, making something come out of thin air, creating something that wasn't there before. And how do we do that? Well, I always go back to cooking, because most people either do cook or know how to cook, or I've seen somebody cook. It's a lot more common than having seen people do magic, or even create music. So we'll talk about cooking. Top Chef, great thing to watch. So you take some water, you put stuff in it, you get soup. You put whatever you want in there, you're going to get something to eat. If it's done well, you're going to like it. So what that is tempering. You're changing one thing into another. You're moving one thing into another. You're creating something out of something else. So that's temperance. So you can look at that card there. That's the Rider-Waite card that I put up a link for. But here is the Temperance from the Marseille, one of the older decks. And again, pretty simple. We have an angel here, and she's mixing some stuff up, sort of like my bartender days when I made martinis. So there's that. I made a lot of martinis. So here's that. She's mixing two things together and making them even and thinking through them and taking time. The same thing is going on here in the Rider-Waite deck, which is one I just put up. And again, with this deck is a little more symbolism. It has a little more symbolism again than the Marseille. This angel has 1 foot on earth and 1 foot in the water. While the water is the subconscious, the earth is the conscious material plane. In the background, we have an explosion of a volcano coming up, and that's, the earth itself creating more earth itself. And you have on the one side, you have flowers growing, creative life force going. You have the white of the angel, the symbolism of purity, with those red fiery wings of passion. So purity and passion equals art. There you go. Well, at least the cards say so. Here too in Crowley's deck, a little more interesting, weird, cool. You have a sort of androgynous angel, and the angel has 2 sides to it. It's got dark and light mixing together, dark and light. And we have the symbology of the red eagle and the white lion. So we have passion, and we have purity, and we have the same, really basically the same idea. And she's creating something from nothing. It's becoming alchemy in that. She's becoming, it's alchemical mixtures. That's what this card represents. And the combining of 2 things to make something else. alchemy. It's a whole system of magic, something very interesting to look up if you're interested. ALCHEMY, alchemy. All right, so that's the tarot of thought. What does it mean? Well, when you get it up in a reading, you're getting the card up to tell yourself or someone else that it's time to take your time to create. So if you're dealing with somebody who, in any part of life, it could be a mom, it could be a CEO, it could be a lawyer, it could be an artist, it could be anybody doing anything in life, you are going to say to them or want to say to them, hey, this is time for you to start creating something out of nothing. It's a new project, maybe. It's a new beginning. It's putting ideas to paper. It's building things, or taking your time to make plans to build things, getting things in order for the project you want, taking your time, finding the passion, making sure that your aim is true before you start your work. That's what that tarot card can mean, depending on the layout of the cards and whom you're reading for, but that's the basic idea of this card. Okay, so moving along again. We're doing so great with time. I'm like, wow, Mercury is retrograde and I'm just going right through. Okay, good. One of our favorite cards ever. It's the Devil. I love this card. Again, this is another card that scares people. As soon as they see this, they get very concerned. And you know what? In this card's case, it might be something you want to be cautious about getting up in a reading. I'm going to give you the Rider-Waite, because that's just the best one to look at as far as the symbolism. You can just click on that, and I'll put the other ones up. So here we have the Devil. I love this guy. I just love this guy and his codpiece. It's very funny. Or his bra. Well, it's both. It's just a funny picture to me. You have its horns and you have wings, so it's the fallen angel, the idea of the fallen angel, and he happens to just be standing in a bunch of hot coals. So, okay. And on either side of him, he sort of has devils. They're sort of devilish, and they are chained to his cauldron of hell. So they are chained to him by their necks, right? If you take a look at those chains here and in the Rider-Waite deck, which I'm going to show you now, also up here, which has a little more art to it, the chains are not tight around their necks. They just think they are. So this is more of a Satan look that we're used to. If you're upside down pentagram, by the way, the pentagram around my neck, here it is not upside down. That's symbolism of Wicca and magic. When the pentagram is upside down, as it is in his head, that means that his higher self is buried in the body. It's buried in the material. That's a symbolism of Satanism. That is not to do with witchcraft. That is the opposite and nothing to do with what I do at all, just saying. All right, so this guy is more of what we think Satan looks like. He's even got the symbolism of the cross in his hand. And we have this one female figure and this one male figure. His tail is on fire. Oh, because the devil has lit him on fire, and she has in her hand grapes or fruit to give to him. She's Adam and Eve. There they are, Adam and Eve. The fallen version of Adam and Eve. And also, we go on to Crowley's deck. Now, I'm going to speak sexually explicitly, so forgive me. I don't mean to be rude, but this is about sperm in testicles. If you see, there it is. And the shaft of the penis is where the devil is coming from. And why they did this was to symbolize that people can be trapped by their sexuality. And that's what almost all these cards, though, that's what all these cards mean. It's about being trapped by the material, being trapped by sex, being trapped by what you might think is love and passion and compassion and care for another being, but really it's not. It's really just an attachment of a sexual nature. So when you get this card up, a lot of the times you're going to say to people, well, it could mean that you are in a situation where you think you're doing something altruistic and you're really not. It's about money, it's about material gain, it's about power, and not about anything higher than that. And it's not a spiritual work that you're involved in. Also, you can be reading about a relationship and you can say to them, you're just obsessed with them sexually probably, and it's not really something that's going to last. because once you realize that you are not longer any longer sexually attracted to them, you may walk off, or vice versa. One of the things you will find when you start to read cards, or if you do read cards, I would say that about 75 or 85% or 95% of my readings are about love affairs. Because one of the most confusing things to people, I think, is love affairs and other people's behavior. And when people get into relationships where there's not communication, and when people are behaving in mysterious ways, sometimes people become obsessed and confused, and that's when they search out readings. And so you will find, and I do find, and I'm sure other tarot readers, might also say that they find tons of people get this card up in readings when it comes to love affairs, because it is about obsession. It is about sexual obsession. Is it a love affair, or is it a sex affair? Is it a lust affair? Is it just an obsession? So that's something you need to ask your clients when you get these up, or ask yourself if this becomes your card, the devil. And that is number 14. 1 and 4 equals 5. 5 is the number of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit blended together. In this case, reversed into the ground, into the body, into the genitals, into the earth itself. So there's that. All right, so going on. The Tower. You know, we're almost done. Well, we're not all the way done. There's a lot of cards. Well, there's 21 cards, and we're up to 16. And I don't think we're going to make any more cards after this. This is going to be the last one. Or maybe I won't do the Tower. I'm not going to do the Tower. Oh, I'm not going to do the Tower. I'm going to start with the Tower next month. So I think that's enough cards. We went from 6 to 14. That's 9 cards. That's a lot of cards to look at. So we're up to 16, which is great. So how do we start reading these cards? I suggest very strongly you do start going between 1 and 16. Pull those out of your deck, whatever deck you have. Remember, you don't want a fortune-telling deck. These are not the Normand cards. These are not gypsy-telling cards. This is not Doreen Virtue's cards. These are not angel cards. This is tarot cards. You want to get a tarot deck. I find the best deck to start with, at least for me, and for many I know, is the Rider-Waite deck. Only because it's so thick and so full of Freudian and Jungian symbology. It really speaks to our minds at this time in history. Although the Thoth deck, the Crowley deck also does, because it was created in the middle of the beginning part of the 20th century. Still, you can go way back and get an old card deck like my Visconti cards, or you can go ahead and get something super modern. There are people that do all kinds of tarot cards. I've even seen cartoons. Some people, and one of the assignments I had in one of my covens was we created our own deck at the time. So we had to say, okay, who's the fool? Who's the magician? Who's the empress? And we actually cut out pictures of people that were in newspapers and magazines at the time and put them on cards. So that's a way to think. And as you're going along this path, you start to see, oh my gosh, that's temperance. Oh, that's how that painter made that painting. He used temperance, or that's how tempera paints. You ever hear of that? Why do you think they call it? Because they're mixed. Just saying. Also, this is, look at the chef. He created this beautiful dish. He tempered it with fire. He tempered it. Or, oh, wow, he's really obsessed with her. He thinks he loves her, but maybe they're just drawn together sexually. Yeah, that's like the devil card, you know. Or, oh, that was a big transition in the world. That's like death. And there was death. Like those fires that are happening actually out in California right now, that's the death card. That's what that is. It's the end of something and the start of something else. It's also temperance. It's also changing into something else. So sitting with these cards, starting with the full card and now getting up until number 16, which we're up to, we're just stopping at the Tower, stop at 15, and just take a look through them and study them. You could take, we have 30 days before I show up here again talking this much about tarot cards. You can take these days and actually go back and look at the other videos and sit with them and fast forward through whatever you don't want to look at, then hone in on the cards you do want to. Do what I did with these links and start amassing links, reading about cards, just reading about them. We're so lucky now to have the internet. When I first started reading, of course, there was nothing. Nothing at all. Tell me we have to stop soon. So, yes, I know. Thank you. So, you want to start reading, maybe, mix up these 15 cards, and somebody else is telling me it's my cuckoo clock, it's time to go, but we're going in a minute. Mix up your cards, sit with them, do a 1-card reading a day, maybe do 2 or 3 cards in a spread before you start getting involved in much more complicated spreads. Let's just do between 1 and 3 cards. If you do 3 cards, beginning, middle, and end, the start, the middle, the finish, however you want to, just 3 cards, beginning, middle, and end is always good, or the past, the present, the future on any kind of subject that you want to have. All right, so that's a way to start. I'm so happy we got this far, because in the next one, we'll be able to finish the major arcana, and I can start talking about spreads a little bit and how to lay down, say, a simple Celtic spread, which is one of the most common card spreads that there are. So between now and then, we will probably have a holiday. Some people call it Christmas. Some people call it Hanukkah. Some people call it a lot of things. I call it Yule. So blessed Yule, and may the God and Goddess be with you always. And may Mercury bless you with intelligence and knowledge through this period of retrograde. And may you really reap what you sow as far as your studies are concerned. Have a wonderful month. Enjoy the cards. And as I said, write to me anytime. And I'm going to put all the links on this video as to where you can find me. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.